Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts, and welcome to a new occasional series here on this channel that I am calling Scrap Happy. And that's because I'm asked long and often about, do I have any ideas for ways to use up our paper scraps? If you are watching this channel, you probably work in paper arts. You make blank books, you make art journals, junk journals, maybe you make cards or scrapbooks. And if you do, you're going to have a lot of scraps of paper that are waiting for you to make them into something. Once or twice a month, we're going to do that. Welcome to Scrap Happy Saturday. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show how to make a little blank book out of scraps. I have done this before on the channel, if this looks familiar, but lately I've actually had several requests saying, hey, how did you make that? So either there are a lot of new eyeballs on the channel, or the video got buried for some of you, or maybe both. Anyway, join me because I'm going to show you simple ways to use those scraps up to make these little books. Sometimes scraps can be teeny tiny bits of scraplets. And I do save those, and we can use those for making collage and abstract pieces. But a lot of times, what I call scraps are leftover papers from other projects. This is from last week when I was demonstrating some mark making with coffee and tea. Well, now I've got a bunch of these. Got to do something with them. How about turning them into a part of a journal? It's kind of medium size. This is from a project I made for the graphics fairy, golly, about 6 years ago. I didn't want to throw it away. So you can see these are not always baby scraps. These are leftover. Actually, it's more accurate to call them pieces that are left over from other projects. But again, I'm sure you have something like it. The good news is probably the most challenging part of making this book is narrowing down the papers that you're going to use when you make your signature. But I'm just going to jump right in and give you an idea of what that might look like. This book is about 3 1/4 by 4 1/2-ish. But, make it to whatever size feels good to you. This is about palm-sized. I really like it because it's pretty, but it's also very light. It's practical. You could use it in this format if you wanted to draw or write. You could turn it over and do portrait. And it's very light, which means you can just throw it in your art bag or your handbag. It weighs nothing. So I want to start by looking at my scraps that are going to be about a size that would go here. For this journal, I'm going to be using 10 sheets of paper, 10 scraps of paper. That would give me folded, that's going to give me 10 sheets and 10 sheets, so that's 20 pages, and that's 40 pages front and back to work on. I'm going to start by choosing a piece of paper that's going to be kind of a template for size. Let's see, again, this is 3 1/4 by 4 1/2-ish, which is 8 centimeters by 12. But that's very rough, a rough guide. But because it's about the size I want, now I can go and size my papers to go with that. The first thing I'm going to do is, this is a super messy book, and I don't have a lot of use for perfect, crisp edges. If you do, please leave them perfect and crisp. But I'm going to be rough tearing most of mine, and my pages will not be matchy-matchy. This is from an old page from a magazine. And I did a video where I showed how to use coffee table books and magazine pages and distress them. If you missed that video, I'm going to link to that in the text box below this video, and you'll be able to find that. In the meantime, this is left over from that video and that project, and yeah, I'm not going to throw that away. I'm going to match it up here. Right, that's pretty close. So I'm just going to tear a little bit more off of the edges here. Completely doing this to the eyeball. And when I get to assembling the book, you'll see we're going to add some gesso or something. So we'll be able to work on that page. Now I'm just going to keep going through my scraps. This is from an old scrapbook pad. I might use that as the cover. Let's see. Here's some text that I tore out when I was making an altered book. It got ripped. I don't care. Here's some text that's a little more cooperative. And again, it's torn, but that's fine. So what I'm going to do is, again, using this as my kind of a template for size, just rough draw that off right there. And now I can and I have another page for my signature. And I'm just going to go through these mixed scraps and pick out 10 pages until I have my signature. Again, look at this. This is from some paper I made from paper napkins. And it's a mishap. Well, the great thing about working with your scraps is that just doesn't matter. I've got some gauze that I've stiffened with paste. Ooh, I think I'm going to add that. So I'm just going to go through and pick out the pages and come back with a signature. It's coming along now, so I thought I would show you some of the contenders auditioning for papers in this book. So we've got the magazine page, some text, a napkin that's been turned into paper. This is, I ordered something that came from Belgium years ago, and this was a stamp that was on the parcel. There's the stamp, and there's the, I don't know what that is. But anyway, I've kept it all this time because it sure looks cool. It's been in the scrap box. Now it's going to be a page. This was a wrapper for some pastry. And I am a sucker for pastry, and it's a memory, and I couldn't throw that away either. So now That's been in the scrap box. And that can go into the book. This is from about 5 years ago when I made a video using gesso for mark making. And after I made the video, I threw it in the box. So now let's see. I want those ampersands to show. So I'm just going to tear, make a border. And there's another sheet. This was an experiment that using echo prints on ledger paper, and I did not like it. But I think it'll do just fine here. Some mulberry paper that I drew on. You know, I don't want this drawing in my book, so I'm going to cover that up with... Do you recognize this? This is from back in the day, Tim Holtz paper. I don't really use that now. It looks cool. So I'm going to cover up, these two pieces of paper are quite thin. So I can make them into one piece of paper. Cover up that drawing. And I've got another paper for the signature. This was from a scrap of a gardening magazine. And now the signature is coming together. Finally, I found this piece of old marbled paper from some end papers in an old book. And I'm going to go with that as my sort of cover thing. So this one's ready to go, and I'm going to sew this, show you how to sew it together in just a mo. But while I was doing this, I excavated so many papers, I went ahead and made a second, I am making a second book. So I just want to explain again about scraps. Okay, this is from a project that didn't work. And in fact, the paper had holes in it, but I couldn't just throw them away. So now they're going to be a longer, I like this one, it's more of a landscape format. Got some torn up handwritten pieces. This is from last week when I was showing the coffee and tea mark making. This is from a glossy Reader's Digest atlas, and I took a sanding block and I buffed out a lot of the glossiness. So now it's much more, quite a bit more neutral. This is a page from a magazine. And again, on this side, I buffed back a lot of that glossiness. And I'll link to that video showing how you can do that yourself to make your pages look a little bit more aged and ready to work. This is from another project that went wrong. I was trying to dye on this watercolor paper and I wasn't happy with it. But I sure wasn't going to throw it away. Are you nuts? So now I can, yeah, we'll go that way. Save it, more scraps. And I can fold that and make that part of the signature. For the outside of this one, I've been experimenting at home with boiling and working with cardboard. And this is from a box that some stuff came in. And I let that soak for a few hours in some tea. I'm going to come back and sew those. Back to the first one. Now, when you start to assemble your book, there's two things. Take every piece and give it a nice, sharp crease. Even though this is a messy, distressy kind of a look, you want your pages to fit together well. And they're going to nestle a lot better if they have a crease there. Now, when you're assembling, these are all different sizes. The only thing you want to do is make sure that you center each page to the page it's facing. So imagine on every page that you look at that there's a dot, a space in the perfect middle of this page. And match that up to the middle, no matter what the other paper size is. Make sure that you match it up to the imaginary middle of that page. Now, this is quite a bit smaller, but there's our imaginary middle here, so we're matching up middle to middle. And that way, even though we have different size papers, they'll be symmetrical once they're sewn. To sew this together, we need to mark off where we're going to sew. I'm going to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. If you already know how to make one of these, you just scamper on ahead a couple of minutes and we'll see you when we get there. Now this is approximately 5 inches and I want halfway, so there's 2.5. That's 1. And then I'm going to go about 1/2 inch or 2 centimeters on either side. So we've got 1, 2, 3. That's where our stitches are going to be. See, you don't have to be afraid of 3 little stitches. Now, it helps if you make your holes ahead of time. And to do this, I'm using an awl. You could use a thumbtack. Someone suggested an ice pick, if you have an old-timey ice pick. But you can always use a thumbtack or a needle. And you want to make your hole all the way through all the pages. I'm using an old dictionary to protect my workspace. Back in the day, we used phone books. But you could use a magazine or anything like that. And now we've got our holes and we're ready to sew. To sew, I am just using some linen thread, but you could also use embroidery floss, embroidery thread, or as I always recommend, you could use dental floss. Because what is dental floss except waxed cotton thread? I want 1 length, 2 lengths, 3 lengths is going to be plenty times the length of your book. But I'm a nervous sort when it comes to sewing, so I'm going to make 4 lengths of thread. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have waxed my thread. That's just a completely optional stage. You can sew with your threads to the inside or the outside. And since my thread is a sort of a brick red color that matches this brick red in the marbled paper, I'm going to leave my strings hanging on the outside. Now you just want to go in through that hole in the middle and pull. I've put a little loose, very loose knot there so that I don't pull that all the way through, as I tend to do. Now go up. That's 1 hole, 2 holes. Now you just want to pull that pull that tight and go down to your 3rd hole. Now you want to pull these tight, but don't pull them like that because you'll pull the paper apart. Pull it straight up and down. Like this. Up. Not this way. Up. Okay. So I'm not worrying about this too much anyway since it's a distressed kind of book. So these will be sort of medium tight. The final stitch is to go back through the middle that you came in at. I'm going to let that take out that little knot. Pull these up and tighten. It's not too bad. And then I'm going to put a knot. See, it's too much thread. And now I have a little, really cool little book. And there you go. 2 original books made from scrap papers from old projects. Do a little flip through here. These are called, I call these boiled pages. And I have an online class showing how to make boiled pages and then turn those into books. Last year, I showed how to make paper netting with napkins and twine. And this was an offcut of one of those. The magazine page. And then this one with the marbled cover. You are very much meant to work in these, to use them as a kind of a journal, a kind of a blank book after a fashion. And if you'll join me in a few days, I'm going to show you a lot of ways that you can work in these messy, cool pages using other scraps, using gesso and ink, water solubles, and other stuff. So please join me for that, and I'll show you how to fill up these pages. If you like the content on this channel and you'd like to support this channel, you can do that by following the link in the text box below the video. It will take you to Ko-fi, and you can make a one-off contribution. You can become a monthly member and get occasional free stuff. Or you can just go over and become a follower and check out some of the newslettery blog entries and see what's going on there. So follow the link. If you have any questions or any feedback, please let me know in the comments below so that we can compare notes. Join me in a few days. I'm going to fill up the pages, and until then, stay scrap happy. Bye.